Welcome back. Francesca Hughes here again, Head of School of Architecture. And now let's take some time to look under the hood of the school and let me take you through it in a bit more detail. As I mentioned earlier, we are in the centre of Sydney, Central Campus, in the heart of the Sydney Bicentral Station and just a stone's throw from some of Sydney's most important cultural attractions. We have a diverse student body and our school is its people. You are the kind of students we are looking for, students willing to rise to the challenge and keen to learn and explore through your imagination and through the work that we're doing in the studio. Our students frequently are employed by local practices as we have very strong relations to industry, and they regularly work at practices such as Arabs, Candelapis Associates, Grimshaw Architects, and BVN and ARMS, Ashton Raggett McDoodles. We are also us, the staff. A staff is a group of international practitioners with a strong international profile, such as Terroir Architects, Professor Gerard Reinmuth, who has projects all over the world, including in Copenhagen and Australia here, but also Fake Industries practitioner Ötzi Grau, recently won this competition in Spain, and Super Maneuver, David Pegram, who runs first year, and here's a project he collaborated on with Super Maneuver with ETH. Fake Industries and GFA2 Architects recently exhibited this at the Chicago Biennale, and Grandessa Studio and their team recently exhibited this as a winning project of the Golden Bee at the Milan Triennale. All of which is to say, we have a very vibrant and dynamic team of practicing architects that are leading in the faculty now. We also have some world-class scholars, and we all team together with local architects such as Angelo Candelapis himself from Candelapis Architects, or a younger generation, other architects, in the teaching and the running of our studios here. School of Architecture has 3 programs: landscape architecture, architecture itself, and interior architecture. All 3 are accredited. The bulk of our teaching happens in our studios. The studio are the crucible of learning and thinking here. For us, the studios, both digital and analog, are both the laboratory in which experiments happen, in which we test ideas. They are our courtroom in which we teach you how to think and to reason and to argue, and they are also the space of performance in which you present your work and you ultimately acquire one of the most important skills of a practicing architect, interior architect, or landscape architect. Our studios are supported by our fantastic new library and regularly supported by our new review space or crit space. The review is a very important part of the culture of the school. This is where you present your work to your fellow students, to the people teaching in the school, but also to leading people in industry. This is your opportunity to meet industry and also to forge your own identity as a designer. Studio crits happen in the studios, or the reviews happen in the studios, but we also... So let's go through the 3 programs. Bachelor of Architecture, Bachelor of Landscape Architecture is a 3-year program. In the program is about 200 students strong right now, and the program is focused on gearing itself up to address climate crisis, to look at our landscape, to look at systems of restoration and rehabilitation that might be possible, to look closely at our botany, and particularly our indigenous botany, to look at how we map the complex systems that make up any landscape, both landscapes across Australia and more locally our Sydney Basin. We work with state-of-the-art representation technologies. This is point cloud work and LiDAR scanning done by James Melson, who's joined the landscape faculty of Landscape Studio with technologies he pioneered at ETH. In the landscape architecture studios, you'll also be looking at indigenous readings of the landscape, indigenous technologies, and employing indigenous design strategies as you work on land forming and all of the kind of fundamental elements of becoming a landscape architect. landscape technologies, botany, and so on. You then can move on to the Masters of Landscape Architecture as part of our 3+2 program that we're starting. And in the 2-year Masters, you'll be able to kind of specialize more intensely into developing landscape modeling and simulation techniques. Here, a recent workshop using the robot to look at coastal erosion, but also in how you argue to the multi-stakeholder parties in large-scale territory projects, in the kind of complex, multivalent projects that professional landscape architects engage in. The Bachelor of Design of Architecture is also 3 years. We kick off with a lot of making. Here is making one-to-one that the first-year cohorts do with each other. It's very hands-on, as you can see here. And our one-to-one installation is in our courtyard, in our building, and we make good use of it through the year. That culture of thinking about how things are assembled, how things are made, underpins the whole of the undergrad. And by second and third year, you're very good at it, and we see some rather perfectly produced models coming out. This is developed in sketches, and all of this kind of thing funnels into the sometimes quite exquisite models that architecture students are producing, operating at different scales, the scale of the city and the scale of the building, also folding in what you're learning in history and theory, and through new technologies of making, and in the environmental technologies classes that you're doing. And this, in a sense, comes together, fired by your imagination, into the capstone project at the end of the third-year studio that culminates the undergrad for architecture. You may then move on to the Masters of Architecture, a 2-year program through which you take 4 studios, 4 professional accredited courses, and 4 electives. The Master's Studio is a particularly dynamic part of the school. Here are some of the current studios running. As you can see, Angelo Candelapas, but also a landscape studio focused on fire, the recent fires, and indigenous fire practice. In the Masters of Architecture, you are really able to start to curate your identity. Your identity as a future architect and as a future practitioner. You might choose a studio that looks at decolonization. You might choose a studio that looks closely at the urban surface. You might choose a studio that looks closely at computational design and the latest form-making techniques, or one that looks at the politics of surveillance within the space of commons. You might choose a studio such as the one operating now, run by Amaya Sanchez of Grandeza in collaboration with Liam Young, international architect from LA, for a joint project of Planet City that UTS is delivering to the National Gallery of Victoria for its Biennale at the end of the year. You might choose a studio where you're able actually to take a thesis project and develop to a quite exquisite and sophisticated level new structural techniques, new ways of making allegorical models that explore different ideas current in architecture, new fabrication techniques such as this Ava's handkerchief that was delivered last year. Lastly, our third program, the Bachelor of Interior Architecture, currently 450 students big, is a discipline in which you're really able to get to grips closely with how we live, redesigning how we live, our immediate environment, and how our body reacts and responds to the immediate interior around us, and to propose future ways of living, the future interior experience. The school has a very healthy and vibrant culture. This is underpinned by many things: our exhibition program, our public lecture program that invites international guests, leveraging on the vast international network of speakers that our international faculty are connecting to, and part of the school culture obviously is also to travel. The global studios and global electives recently have taken us to India, America, Japan, Seoul, and the beginnings of Bauhaus. Equally, we bring the world to you in the form of the international masterclasses, of which we run several every year. Recently this year we had Erika Nakagawa from Tokyo, and most topically, Ivan Munera from Princeton on the subject of the pandemic. Yes, before the pandemic hit, we are always ahead of the curve here. Recent masterclasses in the last couple of years, as you can see, have involved people from Princeton, from the AA in London, from Columbia in New York, from Seoul, Korea National University, from CUNY, and so on. So we hope to be welcoming you into our school very soon, and any questions you may have, you can please ask them in the booth following on.